You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where comedians confess something they want to get off their chest, and we talk about it. And I'm very excited for my guest today. She has a show coming up on the 21st on Zoom, and you can find out all that information by following her at Debra DG on Twitter. It is Debra DiGiovanni. What's up?
Hey! Hi, Teresa.
Hello. I didn't even slip in the twin part. That's always my favorite part about. No, we don't talk about that. Okay.
I don't know. We can absolutely talk about that. But it's true. I always forget that it's like, I mean, you're an identical twin. I am not, but still.
We're the
chosen.
It's
we're
weird,
the chosen
like
people.
with twins. I don't know if you have this too, but like, I just like note when people are I note when people are twins, or when they have twins around. Like, Whitmer Thomas, his mom was a twin.
Yes, mom was a twin. I know.
And anytime it's like. Twins come up around people who have twins in their lives, and then I'll just be like, yeah, they have a twin. And then other people who don't have twins will be like, how do you know all that? I'm like,
because we just know. You can just pick each other out of a crowd. There is an energy. There definitely is an energy. It's that desperate, to be an independent, like me better energy.
It's like, I am unique, but I know I'm not. But
totally.
But Deborah, talking about unique, I like to start with a good confession as a way to sort of get to know you and just have a positive note to begin with. So is there something good you'd like to confess?
Yes, there's something good in it to confess. And you know what? Not a lot of people know this right now, but I have a boyfriend. And I haven't had, I haven't had a boy. And this is why it's such a confession. I've been alone for a really long time. And yeah, I have met during the pandemic. I have met the best man. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Congratulations.
And that is the confession. My boyfriend he's so great. I am cuckoo in love. I
love that. I love that too. And I can tell it's like when you're really in love, because with comedians, when you don't talk about it, that's when it's going really well. And I'm like, I didn't know this.
I know.
Oh, it must have been going really well.
It's almost been a year now. It's like we sort of, I guess we would have started chatting in like May. Oh my God. So yeah.
With pandemic, you guys met over the pandemic?
Yeah, he slid into my DMs on Instagram. What?
I love that. It's kind of I have a boyfriend too, and I'm very it's weird because I became a boyfriend girl over the pandemic, and I wasn't that before, in that like my brand, not on purpose, but people used to be like, oh, Teresa's always going through a breakup, like with someone that she was never officially dating. Like that was the vibe, where it's like I'm going through a breakup, but you were never together.
But my brand, let's be honest, my brand for 20 years has been I'm single. So now I'm all like, fuck, I don't really know what to. I know. I have to change the brand up, but that's okay.
No, I love it because I feel like over pandemic that kind of happened. I mean, there's like obviously so many shitty things that happened over pandemic, but I think low key a lot of people who like had to deal with a lot of things like really saw it through, because I'm like, oh, this is wild that I become a person who goes, my boyfriend.
I know that. Even just saying the term my boyfriend, like even saying it to you, I was like, my boyfriend. I'm choking on it a little bit because, very foreign to me. I haven't said that expression in a really long time.
Oh my God, that's a huge one. That's so good.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Well, we'll get into it, but this podcast I started because I started going to therapy really late in life, and as a Asian American, wasn't a big thing in in my family. And once I started going, I was like, this is great. I love just having someone to talk to and getting things off my chest. So that's sort of what inspired this. That being said, I am not a doctor. This is not therapy. Please do actually, do whatever you need to go see a therapist. But I do like to ask my guests, like, what's your experience with therapy, and how do you, or if you don't go to therapy, like, when you're having bad days, how do you cope? Do you have like a confidant? Like, what's your sort of like, self-care routine?
I am a very big fan of therapy. I have been in therapy now, I would say, pretty consistently for 30 years.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of therapists. My best friend is a therapist. When in the course of us being friends, we've been best friends for 27 years, and she just became licensed about 7 years ago. So and I actually
wait, so she wasn't licensed. Oh, so she was in training.
So she was she was in school and whatever, but she did it slow because she's married, she has a child, and so. But during when she did her master's, when she was getting her whatever degree, I spoke at her master's. I literally performed at her master's.
Oh my God,
Yeah, I know,
So cool.
because it was like, yeah, she was just, it was doing a lot about, like a lot of sort of the things, the problems that sort of bonded us when we first met,
Aw. I
and
didn't
so
know that was a
that's,
thing. So they have like a show for.
yeah, this one, no, this was very much like, she was in sort of like this sort of like, very like, rogue kind of like hippie sort of
Okay.
school for it, and it was just like people present their masters often,
Okay,
so in the
gotcha.
presentation she presented the the big wordy stuff, and then she was like, and now for something different. I went up.
That's great. You were the case study.
I was in literally I was, yeah. But yeah, so no, I love therapy. I feel like there should be a law. I feel like everyone should have to
Yeah.
go to therapy for 5 years. That's,
I think
I
so.
really do. I just think it would help everyone. I'm always shocked when people are against I feel like one of the biggest things you can tell in a person is if someone says to me, yeah, I don't need therapy. It's like, ooh, I mean,
Ooh,
that's,
yeah.
get away from that person. If someone thinks they don't need therapy, you are dealing with a very, very broken person, because
Yeah.
I think everyone needs it. Everyone could benefit from it. But I also don't think that everyone needs to do it for their entire life or for 30 years or whatever. But I think like 5 years, once you become an adult, like
Yeah.
once you hit like 25 or so, 5 years of therapy is just,
It's like
it
second
evens out.
puberty
Yeah.
a little because you go through,
Yeah.
all your emotions and hormones of
Yes.
puberty, and then you're like
Ugh.
an adult, and
Yeah.
you need to process. And it's actually, I feel like so many of the experiences I talk about in therapy are universal, but they're not. I don't know how to explain this. They're universal trauma that there's a universal like low level of trauma that everyone has. And then
Yes.
obviously there's like high levels that
Yes,
like really
yeah.
people need to treat more, which I do fall into that category, but like the low level is like everyone's got a little bit, everyone's got that weird story from like when they were 4 that for some
Absolutely.
reason they can't, look at daisies anymore, and it's not because
that
they
things, yeah, everyone's got like a basic bitch level of like, trauma.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Everyone's
like,
had
just learn
a
it,
problem with a
understand
parent
it.
or a
Yeah.
sibling or whatever. Absolutely. I don't think you make it through the world like living
Yeah.
at all without something. So yeah, I think so too. I think like maybe between the ages of like 30 and 35, that should be the therapy years, and then you're good. My therapist now, my present therapist now, was when it was, saying like, I would maybe, the last couple of years, I'd like to meet someone. And he said all the time, he's like, one of the absolute, you cannot, it has to be on the list of what you're looking for in a man is they have to have been in therapy. He's like, he's like, you can't date anyone that hasn't been in therapy for at least 2 years. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, there you go.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've been. My boyfriend's mom was a therapist. I think she's retired now. So that made me be like, okay, when can I meet
Okay.
her? Like, I want to work with her. But like,
Absolutely.
but I do think like so. But we've talked about he doesn't go regularly now, and recently because I've been going so much during the pandemic for like more specialized like healing trauma. And that to me, I was like, oh, that opened up a whole new world. Because I'm all for like talk therapy, but all of a sudden I was like doing like treating specific things and seeing like the kind of progress you see when you're like, I'm nursing my broken bone and I can walk. So then I was like, I think because it's always tricky to tell someone to go. Because for me, it's like I don't think he needs to go to fix problems. But I was like, I'm learning languages that you should learn to speak with me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like
yeah,
the way
yeah.
that I
It's
talk
because it
about
brings you up to the
triggering
same
and-
level. It like brings you up to the same
Yeah.
level. Like it is very much, and again, it's like in relationships, there is, I mean, such a difference when someone is emotionally evolved. Like when
Yeah.
someone is emotionally mature, it's a whole different thing. It's not like. Because then you can communicate. You don't fight in the way that you used to fight when you were younger and just like, raw all the time. It just changes things. But you're right in terms of like when you start attacking like specific areas of trauma, that's a whole different thing.
It's so
That's a whole-
exciting in a way
yeah.
that makes me feel I don't know, I wasn't a big athlete growing up, but I loved watching sports for some reason. I think watching sports I've equated more to the arts and like theater than I think sports fans would like me to. But 'cause I'm always like, it's like, you didn't necessarily crush the set or whatever. I'm like, you didn't win the game, but you're a good athlete.
Yeah.
Like we all know. Like, but to me, I sometimes think of therapy that way because I'll like learn specialized skills. Like, oh, this is how I need to get through, this exact PTSD trigger that will happen. And then when it's happening and I'm in a safe space, I feel like I'm literally like, all right, we're going into sparring.
You're killing it.
ring. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it's so wild to think of it that way. But yeah.
And you also, and I think too, you also like go through peaks and valleys in therapy. Like you definitely have therapy sessions where you go, I don't really have anything to talk about today.
Yeah.
And and that's usually, those are the ones that are the best ones, that you end up sobbing when you're like, I have nothing to talk about, and then wrong. But yeah, you kind of like, and it's because I think people start going to therapy because they're sad. Something happened, and then they go to therapy. And it's like, that's great, whatever gets you there. But then it's like, after you get over that sadness, whatever comes after it is when the real change is made,
Yeah, it's a bit of a bait and switch, because
is.
you go in a crisis, but when you're in crisis mode, that's not when you're in your reasoning mode. So then they put a little Band-Aid on it and you figure it out, and then that's when they're like, now let's
stick
dig
around.
in. And you're like, I thought I was good. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of talked about, I'm not going to get too into all the things we talked about before the pod, but I will, because this is related. During my trauma therapy this year, I've really got a lot of repressed memories back from my heart surgery as a baby. And that was wild, because it's like, it makes sense as an adult to be like, of course, even if I was under and I was a baby and I don't remember, being cut open as a child is like traumatizing, but it's so silly to think about now because it feels so disconnected. But when I finally connected the feelings of it was sort of the feeling I get when I get panic attacks, like I can't breathe, I'm gasping, and that connected to these memories, which when I talk about repressed memories, I know there's so many schools of thoughts. Like, I don't really believe exactly that everything I saw exactly happened, but it's what my brain felt at the time, So it connected really strongly to the feeling of going under and going to surgery and sort of losing my air. And that was wild because, for so long I was just like, I'm just emotionally unavailable like everyone else in New York. And I just have my commitment issues, and that's just how I am for the rest of my life. And then suddenly it was like, oh no, but you were cut open as a child. And actually that if you address that, you can be loved. And I was like, whoa.
That's huge. I have goosebumps.
So
I have goosebumps.
wild.
It's true. And when you're saying about repressed memories, again, it's like, I believe that, but I think when we say that, a lot of people roll their eyes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, well, you were molested. It's like, well, some people were, but it's not just that.
No, and it's true. It's like, like when you'd said about, of sports and athletes, when someone says to you, your muscles have memory, so does, your body holds memories. It just does. It just does. So it's like, in times of trauma, our bodies and our brains protect ourselves. And then it comes out. Sometimes it comes out when you don't want it to. And sometimes it comes out in therapy, and sometimes it comes out with work, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's why, the problems ensue. But like memories stick around. They're in there. They are absorbed into our whatever, our muscles, our psyche, our soul, or whatever,
I love, there's a joke that, I'm not going to quote your entire joke back to you, but I always think about this, but your joke about crying on command in front of your friend and how you were like, I can't stop. I always think about that. But I am curious, because, all your jokes are so hilarious, but I love, to me, they resonate also because there's the part where it's a little bit of coping where I'm like, oh, it's funny to me, but also it's funny because also I've been there on the other side. But is that so? Outside of in terms of expressing emotions, are you someone who feels very freely? When you feel those feelings, it's let me let it out because this is how I process. Or are you let me hold it in?
I definitely as a child, I was considered sort of a crybaby because I wasn't. I was only considered a crybaby by one of my tormentors. But it was I was always sort of very open to express how I was feeling. And then I went through a phase of not crying at all.
Okay.
And then going back to therapy.
Because you were feeling self-conscious about it?
Yeah, of course, protecting yourself. And then I started going to therapy again, and then there was many years of just tons and tons and tons of crying. And now I'm tempered. Now I'm I kind of, cry when it's appropriate. And sometimes sometimes it's just when you get on connect with your therapist, and it's just okay, and you just cry because your body's I really need this. But yeah, I definitely, I don't have any trouble expressing my emotions. I really, really don't. And comedy has always been for me, and that was one of those things too. It's people ask, it's like, how did you develop your persona? And I'm like, dude, it's not a persona. It's
You're
just,
like,
it just
it's the
came out. You
defense
know what I mean?
mechanism. No.
It just, yeah, right. It's like, I didn't even mean it. Like, it was just one day, I started getting really honest and I was like, ooh, and then I've never sort of pulled back. It worked. And then I was like, oh, okay. And it is, comedy is definitely very therapeutic for me and definitely very like, there's often times where I'm like, I probably shouldn't be revealing this much, but then I'm like, whatever. I mean, what else? Who am I saving it for?
I'll also like that say, I'll also add on to that and say that it's therapeutic for others as well when you're good at it, which you are. Because I think there's a difference when you see like new open micers going on stage and you're like, oh, you do need therapy, but also like you also need to write better. And
yes, exactly. Yeah. When they're just screaming their pain and you're like, listen, I love this. It's
not helpful.
I love this.
They're feeling worse. They feel worse because they're bombing and it's like they're expecting
totally.
the validation to help them. But I think truly what you're talking about, which I agree with, is like the comedy helps you process your feelings in a way that's like eloquent enough for others who can't do that to then connect to you and
to
then
connect
process.
exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, and that's why I've been very fortunate in my career, because I do have this sort of gift of connection. You know what I mean? It's like, when I grew up in Toronto in comedy, where I started comedy, I grew up with a gang of guys, right? So it was like me and a bunch of dudes that are still my friends, and good comics. But they always had this like thing of just like, one of my friends we used to tease because he never failed. He killed every set. I never saw him bomb. In 15 years, I never saw him bomb. And we were always like, fuck you, man. Like but after shows, people come up to him and go, that was really good. And people always wanted to hug me. Do you know what I mean? They'd be like, oh my God. And I was just like, oh yeah, don't kid yourself. Like it's a different thing. They shake your, and that was really funny, man. But then they always wanted to, you remind me of my best friend from grade school, or you remind me of my favorite teacher. And I'm like, you betcha, that's it.
But that sounds like more their thing sometimes.
Yeah.
But I totally, I know what you mean, because then once it's so obvious the pattern of you're doing shows like that over and over that you notice, and then that one audience member will just be like, oh, I didn't think about it. You're overreacting. You're like, no, you're like a pattern that I see over and over.
That's exactly you are a pattern, a human pattern. But yeah.
Oh man. Well, I really am excited to get to our confession, but first we're gonna take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to that. And we're back. Oh my God, what a fun little break. Deborah, I'm so excited to ask you this. Is there anything you'd like to tell me?
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Now, how deep are we allowed to go? I feel like we're allowed to go.
Or as light as you want. Truly, it's the world is your oyster. Just know that no territory has not been covered, but whatever you're comfortable with. Because I do think, I mean, I've cried on this podcast before, so don't be afraid of making me feel bad.
Okay.
But,
okay. What will I confess? What will I tell you? My mother passed away just over 3 years, almost. I think it might be 4 years now. I'm not good at timeline, I have to tell you, and I feel like the pandemic doesn't help. Like my brain is like, did it happen a week ago or 8 years ago? I have no idea. But my mom died definitely 3 years ago at Christmas, and I never had a good relationship with my mother. I never did. I was, I have a bunch of siblings. I have 3 sisters and a little brother. And as we mentioned before, I am a twin, and my mother was very close with my twin sister.
Oh wow!
And very close with my twin sister, and I just wasn't. And I have a whole theory of twins. Maybe I don't know if we want to go into it. But are you the first or second? Were you first or second born?
I am the first, and I definitely I'm interested in unpacking. But first, I want to say I'm so sorry about your mother. I mean,
thank you. My mom. It was cancer. It just at the end, we were glad because it was just so awful, as cancer is. But so I'm the second born.
Okay.
And it was just, I have a whole theory about twins where, the firstborn is often the one that, mom takes care of first. Right, you know what I mean. So this is, that was true. It's like when we need to be held, it was always my mother took my twin sister Joanne, and I was held by whoever else was there. My father, the nanny, a sister, a cousin, somebody. So it was like, I was very much a second choice to my mother.
Oh,
And also too, at the time, my mother, my mom didn't want to have twins. She didn't want to have twins. She'd already had 2 kids, and there was a pregnancy before us that didn't make it. And so like, I think my mother was kind of just like, it was a lot. And so she didn't really want to have twins. And my dad really wanted boys and all of this. And so I kind of like I would say my trauma started very, in utero.
Early,
like it was very from birth. And my mom and I, we just never really got along. We were that kind of relationship where, I know she loved me, I loved her, but like one of her favorite things to say to me was, I love you, but I don't like you. We had a hard relationship. So what I'm confessing, okay.
Well, I want to. Okay, wait. Can I pause real quick? Because there's so much there. But and also, of course, like as a twin, I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot going on here. But I'm interested in when you might be getting to this, but because you're saying like you didn't have a good relationship and you knew it started early. When did you first like sort of feel that? Because as a child, you're not always aware, Yeah. Was it very prominent as a child? I feel like
it was prominent young, but I also too like my memories really probably only start maybe around 5 years old. I don't have a lot before 5, and I don't think that's too unique. I think that might be a lot of people, but it was. I kind of knew right away. It's like we were just very very separate. Like my twin sister, we're very different, right? Because we are fraternal. And Joanne, as a girl, was very blonde, and I am not. I'm very dark. But my mom used to like Joanne would wear, hair and ringlets and ponytails, and my mother used to like just shear my hair off. Like I was like, why? My mother like, you're rambunctious. And it was very, it was very, as a child, as a little girl, it's traumatizing. And so it was very known to me that she liked Joanne better than me.
You could feel the difference. How was it with you and your sister? Was Joanna like gloating about it? Was she supportive?
No, and that was the thing. And then Joanna and I were best friends. Yeah. Like she was like, we did have the twin bond, but there did, which I became to resent much later in our lives. But like I was also Joanne's keeper. Like that was it. And that was sort of a job given to me by my mother, that she was like, you look after Joanne. And even though Joanne was the older twin, only by 8 minutes, I mean, please, not older, she was still the first twin, but I sort of acted as the big sister.
Yeah.
So, and my twin is, she was a shy kid and I wasn't, and she was very, sort of meek and I wasn't. So she required a little bit of protection, and that was me. That was my job.
Because I'm older by 2 minutes, but in Chinese you call the older sister and younger sister different names. So like really the identity of Jeje, which is older sister, like I took that on and she was Mei Mei. Yeah. But she almost, I don't like when you're saying this, I was trying to think if I could transcribe this, but I think in a way, so I always felt like I was the outsider, but I do actually think that my mom, when we were younger, tried to make me like that golden child, because I do think my sister always felt like more needy. But as we got older, I don't think I wanted to play that game, so I would kind of distance myself and be more independent in a way where now as adults, I find that my sister and my mom have a much closer relationship now.
Interesting. See? Isn't that funny?
Yeah. And in a way where sometimes I feel like there's still a trauma bond, which I love them both, but there's like times when I'm like, oh, she was helping her with like financially for a lot longer than she was with me.
Yes.
And things like that. And I felt like the keeper a lot. Like I always felt like I learned things on my own, and then my sister, who was younger, would, find herself in situations where she's like, I don't know what to do here or this, and then I would feel like...
And you would come and help her out or show her what you...
almost guilty, like if I didn't do something, then she would get hurt and it would be my fault. And
Totally. And that's how, same thing with me. That's how it was. It was just sort of like, Debra, help her. Debra, do this. And it got to, I was her physical protector. If anyone it would be like, back off of my sister. Like it was very much. Wow. And then it was like, Joanne she was a bit of a fearful child. So there was, and I mean, because I grew up in a big family, like I shared a bedroom with my twin sister until I was 18. Until we moved out of the house. Like that was just what we did. And I was desperate for independence. Like I was
Me too. I
Desperate
mean,
for,
it makes
and
sense
she
that we're the
wasn't.
ones that ended up
Yeah.
in comedy.
Right, I was not a surprise, not a surprise at all. But she wasn't though. Like Joanne was, she wanted to sleep together every night. Can we sleep
man.
together? And I'd be like, no. I was desperate to be alone. Like a story that I've told before, that always makes me giggle is like on our first day of school, like whatever it is, JK, junior kindergarten is what we called it in Canada. So like you're like, I don't know, maybe 4, maybe 5. And like, mom dropping us both off and Joanne crying and clinging to my mother.
Aw.
And apparently I just got up, walked into the classroom, looked over my shoulder and said, see ya, and
Bye,
walked and just bye.
Oh
That
my
was,
God.
and she screamed and cried not to leave. And I was like, oh, I'm out. Bye. But so I always wanted to be, independent. And then as we did when we went to college, I was like, I moved
you go
right
to the
away to
same
Toronto.
college?
No, and she went to a different school about like 4 hours away from me. But it was like, for me, I was like, I don't live here anymore.
Yeah.
Bye. When I
We
moved
went
out
opposite,
at 19, I was like, see ya. And she didn't. Like, and she went home, same thing. She went home, every summer, home every weekend, and then even after college went home and lived with mom and dad for a bit. And I, like, that was it. I was like,
oh my God, this
I'm
is
out.
so wild. I'm
Right?
like,
Is
you're
that
like
weird?
turning. I mean, I know you have theories about it, but like, this is the first time I'm like making that parallel, and I'm like,
Right?
you're onto something because
That's what I'm saying. So it is because it was like, she was very bonded with my mother. Okay, so fast forward all these years, and there was a long time in my life where I just didn't have any relationship with my family at all.
Okay.
I just didn't. Like there was.
Did you feel that? Because it sounded like you had other siblings older as well. Was there more than just being different than your sister that made you feel like an outsider, or are you just really out looking for?
That's a good question. That is like, it was definitely, the twin was the foremost. That was in the forefront of everything. I had a good relationship with my little brother. And then there was, my eldest sister is troubled.
So wait,
and
so you had the younger...
I have 2 older sisters, my twin, and then my little brother.
How far apart are you and your brother?
Like, God, me and my brother 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so
We're
pretty close. We're pretty close in age, all of us.
Was 8 years younger than us, but me and him were really close. But we
Interesting.
both were queer. I mean, he was so much younger than me. Like, fortunately, he passed away when he was 17, but he had come out like right before that. And I didn't realize I was queer most of my life growing up, even though it now seems obvious. So now when I go back and I think about how different I was, I sometimes do attribute it to that, but I don't think that's totally it. Like that's like the easy answer to be like, well, I was the bisexual one, so I was the black sheep of the family.
Yeah,
but
it does, but it also doesn't. It doesn't not make sense. You know what I mean? That also.
But the
sorry
twin
about
thing
your
makes.
brother.
Oh, thanks. It's
17.
yeah, it's sad, but it's okay. Sorry, I mean we talked about it on pod before, so I'm just glossing over it. But I sometimes I forget that. When I talk about things in comedy that I assume people know, and then it's just very like
normal.
cavalierly, like, yeah, my brother's dead, and people are like,
Yeah.
what?
You're
And you're like, ugh, I guess, okay, yeah,
So.
But yeah, so you went to college.
Not the best. So it was like me and my siblings were all like, except for obviously the twin, we're all around 2 years apart from each other, right? Very, very tightly spaced. And so so my 2 older sisters, was okay relationships with, and then it stopped. There was something about when I turned about 25, and I think there was just that moment where it was just like, I don't know. I think you have a moment in your adult life where you realize, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, where you have this relationship where you go, well, I don't need to spend time with people that don't like me. Do you know what I mean? It was that kind of thing, I mean, not a coincidence that was roughly around the time that I met my best friend as well, because it was just like, I think there is a point in your life where you realize, oh no, my family are just people that are just trying to survive their life and made their choices to do, whatever. But yeah, so I really kind of cut myself off from my family from about the age of 25, and then
was it
my
an
mother,
active, like a gradual or act? Because I think most people moving away for college, especially far away, you'll have like sort of a gradual independence, and then if like I didn't have the normal functional family like that, but I see it happening when people move away and come back, and you naturally kind of reform the new relationship as adults. And I think in families like our families are so different, but in the parallels that I can sense, there's a sense of like, it was never totally a clean break. And then you come back and you're like, this should have been broken, but this part still, and they don't see me as an adult. And then you have to actively like chop some strings down.
It's exactly it. Like at first, you move away and you miss home because you miss home. That's it.
Yeah.
You're still a teenager. You still miss home. And then, and then sort of visiting became less and less. And then I remember like, I remember a dramatic, 22 or 23-year-old, visit home where literally like walked in, my mother said something to me. I turned around, put my coat back on and walked out the door and like was like, bye, and then left.
How does that feel? Because as a
walked to the
child,
train station, and that was just like, oh, I'm done.
Whoa.
I remember like just being like, I'm not doing that anymore. And so then it really became, I became the one that just didn't visit. And
how did you react to that? Because I think that that's something that I've thought of doing many times when I was younger. And then the first time you actually set a boundary, did she have a reaction?
No, you panic.
Like...
you panic. Like I remember like, like this is many years before cell phones, but like I remember like getting home to my, place in Toronto, my apartment in Toronto, and like calling my boyfriend and crying with my roommates and being like, what did I do? Kind of thing. But that's, it was, I think probably my mother was always a person who, my mother did silent treatment, right? So that was always her thing. Like she just, So
she didn't come back and try to like manipulate you back.
She wasn't chasing.
Okay.
So it was like, okay. And then, and then years passed and then, and then I started doing a lot of drugs and then I, started keeping to myself because of that. So I already had a rift and then it just became more that I was like, well, I don't like you and I don't want to be there anyway. So I'm not going to even bother. And then it started being like,
you almost feed it a little bit, right? You feed the whole, like, it's like, that there's something family related, but then you can like, it sounds cliche but I drank a lot and I went through a phase where I'm not an alcoholic, but I tried to go to AA and I realized that even when I was sober, I still had these problems. So that's how I found out I wasn't an alcoholic, but I did like go through a phase where I was using alcohol in that way. Like I was trying to fill that void and like, but if I become the stereotypical like drunk person having fun, then I can blame it all on, all my issues on the alcohol.
Absolutely. Blame the issues. Absolutely. But I also think there was also a little bit for me was like, how can I make my mother mad? Do you know what I mean? Like, I do feel like there was a large part of my life where it was like, what will piss off my mother? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that was...
Yeah, that's the trauma bond, though. That's the need for some... It's like, even though you don't want the relationship you had, you still need it to be in control.
Totally. Like, even through all of this of, like, hating and I don't care and I'm independent. All I wanted was my mom to love me. Like, I just desperately wanted to be seen.
Yeah.
Just desperately wanted to be seen. Like, there's a lot of that. It's like, being that sort of kid that, like, left and, like, I do whatever I want and I smoke weed and I'm getting tattoos and I live with my boyfriend and, like, it was just, like, all the things that my religious mother hated. All of those things. Then I started comedy and my God, she hated it so much. And it was just all the things, like just everything. Like if I would have, the only thing that I missed and, because it's not true, but it's like, I wish that all I missed was like coming out as a lesbian because that would have been the thing that pushed her. And I was like, oh, should I fake it? Nah, that was like, I do to make my mom mad. But
that's funny because I never, when I did eventually, I was so much older, like out of the house when I came out and I didn't even know if it makes sense to like come out because I wasn't at home. But when I had I was dating a girl at the time, so I was like, I'll tell her, and she completely like quote unquote forgot. And later I had to remind her, and she was like, I don't remember that. And I'm like, you showed you photos. You said something earlier that we kind of brushed by, but when you're talking about when your mom said like I love you but I don't like you, and that really stuck with me because of the words that words I think are my love language, and I feel like maybe for a lot of writers they are too, but that punched me in the gut when I heard you say that.
That's one of the things that it sticks with me. I say it because it's like that's imprinted on who I am. That's imprinted on. It's like and like. You have those moments where you go, do you even know what you're saying? Yeah,
but did she not say that? So she didn't say anything like that to your older sister?
No. It was just, well, it was,
It's interesting. When you say that, because I'm like, I see myself as like really similar to you in the way that I reacted to like trying to get out. But then the tactics, when you said that, I was like, my mom used to call, and this is so long ago, and so like if my mom's listening, she's come a long way. I love you, Mom. But, and, really therapy has helped, but that doesn't erase truth and the facts from the past.
No.
So I will continue. But my sister, she used to call her like Tomeme, which means like stinky little sister. And I think she would tell us she did it in an endearing way, but she never called me that. And my sister would cry, and we were really little, and she'd be like, Tomeme, Tomeme. And my sister would cry and be like, I'm not stinky. And things like that she would say. And then she would ask my sister if I was doing drugs, and I wasn't, but it was like a weird thing because she never asked me if I was doing drugs. So things like that always made me feel like, is she trying to like create a rift? Like, is she jealous of our bond? And it wasn't until I was an adult that I was like, it might not have been conscious, but I think 100% she was. But I don't think it was so malicious. But it is so interesting, like how parents can be jealous of like a twin bond.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also true because, again, it's like, it's another one of these things. Anyone that's young listening to this, your parents are just people. They're literally just, we give them this sort of like pedestal because they're parents. They're not.
Yeah.
So, a mom being jealous of her children's bond, of course, that's normal. It's like the same thing. It's like where a father is often jealous of the bond of the mother between the kids.
Yeah.
It's just they're just people. And also too, it's like, because I am an older person and my parents, my dad is still with us, God bless him, he's 85. It's like, it's a very different generation. So it's like, my parents grew up in a generation that you don't do therapy. It was just, my mother used to call therapy hocus pocus. She's like,
at your emotions and continue like that. And
absolutely, you shut up. You keep it inside, and you do not air dirty laundry. That was the thing. So that there was no therapy. Like, and her father was an alcoholic, and her father, there's all sorts of trauma. And my mother just, they just sucked it up, And so even when I started going to therapy, my mother hated that. So it's like, okay, all of this confession, I'm getting away from the confession, but this is what it is. This is just the backstory on this confession, which may not seem like that big right now.
I've been living this with a lot of confession already. So.
Already, it is. This is all a confession, the whole thing. But then, so very distant from my family. And then it happened where my mom had lung cancer, like previous to it really making her sick. And it was just sort of like, she had lung cancer, there was 2 years of treatment, and then she was fine. And then she was fine for like 3 years. We're all like, oh, mom kicked lung cancer. Yay. But then there was when mom got sick, when it came back. It was, I remember, like she literally, and I've told this story before, like a couple times, where when the lung cancer came back, my mother literally called me and was just like, the lung cancer's back. And I was like, okay. And she had a moment and she was like, do you want to stop hating each other? And I was just like, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And this was very huge for me because also at this time I'd been sober at this point for about a year, because I've been sober for 5.5 years now. So I had just gotten sober. And she just said, do you want to, and that was it. There wasn't even talk of like, because of, and you, and blah, blah, and all of that. There was no like, let's, hash it out. She just said, do you want to stop? And I was like, yeah, I do. And that was huge for me.
Wow.
And for her, it was huge. And so then in the last year and a half of her life, I spent more time and talked to my mother more in 18 months than I had the previous 40,
so beautiful.
So it was, and I feel so grateful. It's one of those things that I'm just like, I'm so grateful for that. And then, going home and like spending time and like going by myself. Because I for years would go and be, are you coming home for Christmas? And I'd be like, yeah. And then Christmas Day I would lie and go, I missed my train.
Wow.
And they'd be like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And that's what I did. And then I would going home and spending time with them alone, just mom and dad and me. And like, there was a lot of, and I told them that I was sober, and it was amazing. They both just went, okay, great, good girl. And I was just like, it was huge. So I'm very, very grateful for that last year and a half. And
how long
we
have
were
you
able
guys
to
not
do that.
talked, but when, like, outside of like, family functions and stuff, when she called you up that day, like how long had you guys like not, like were you in the habit of talking to each other at all?
No, when we spoke, okay, my twin sister talked to her every day of her life. And I used to talk to my mom maybe once every 3 months.
Okay.
That's like a quick conversation.
I talk to my mom a little more than that now because I've been trying this year with therapy stuff, but my sister and her like talk so much everything, and so it is that kind of thing where I'm like,
Joanne spoke to her literally every day of her life.
Yeah.
Every day of her life. So that was, like the trauma bond. It's like, that is Joanne. It was huge. So, yeah, we went to like quarterly phone calls to like, actually
Yeah.
having a relationship. And, and it was really good because, we really made amends and
Yeah, but you're like limited. Like it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you have a timer goes off, and then you're like, gotta go, mom, and I'm like,
Yes,
boundaries.
that was
like, yeah,
exactly and then in that last little bit, there was that sort of like before making the amends, like when my mother would try to talk to me and she'd be like, oh, I know I was a terrible mother, and I'd be like, yeah, you were, but let's move on. Like I was never going to say no, mom. I was like, no, you were a terrible
and
mother
that's
to
why
me,
do moms
and it was
do
just
that?
like,
They love
oh yeah,
to be
yeah,
like, I was
I'm
bad,
not,
and you're like,
yeah. I
is
know,
this
it's
gonna
like you
help?
were.
This is not
You
helping.
were.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you this one. You were. You
Yeah.
traumatized me, and yeah. So fine. But then so the last year and a half were wonderful, and then I spent the last Christmas of my mom died on January 7th.
Oh, wow.
And so we all spent the last Christmas together, and it was wonderful and brilliant, and I'm so grateful.
That's so nice.
I went home from my dad's house like on the 29th of December, and then, she passed on the 7th of January. So I was just like so grateful to have seen my mom. So that being said, the funeral was actually, wonderful. It was just so strange because they usually are. They're weird, and then you have a wonderful time with your family, and we did. My whole family just had this great time because my mother was like, please just have fun. That's what she wanted for us all, and we did. But then since then, so now it's like, I'm serious, like I can't remember. Is it 3 years or 4 years?
That's
I think
part
it was
a
4
little
years this
bit
year.
in a.
God damn it!
That
I'm gonna say
tracks
4
with
years.
grief though, because time does warp itself after events, and not always like I'm not saying like you're in grief now, but in the sense that like but when big things happen, even with like the pandemic as a general, like most people who haven't been through anything traumatic, losing loved ones, can get their sense of time warp. So
It is. So
losing
that
your
yeah,
mom
exactly,
would
because it kind of
really-
freezes for a second, and then
Yeah.
you start going, did that just happen yesterday, or was it?
Yeah,
Anyway,
and you
but the-
dream. I don't know if you have a lot of dreams about lost loved ones, but that I feel like that was a big thing for me is when there's people who go away. Like I'll dream about
Oh yeah,
them, and in
my
ways that
my
feel
mother is
really
often
real.
in my dreams. Yeah,
And they're sometimes so confusing where it'll be like they're in my mind. In the dream I know they're gone, but they're back, and they have an explanation for why they're back, or they're like a child version of themselves, and that can really
wow.
mess up your time.
Oh,
sense
yeah,
of
yeah, timeline, exactly.
Yeah.
Again, that kind of throws it off. But so now, fine. So like my dad, is doing much better, and everyone, we're chugging along in life. And again, it's like, my twin sister spoke to her every single day. And
Yeah.
to be honest, my other two sisters, I think they did too. My eldest sister spoke to her every day, and my second eldest might have spoke to her like maybe like 3 times a week. Do you know? But I never did. Like even in the last year, I never did. And so I guess the confession is like people, of course I'm sad that my mother is gone. Of course I'm sad that my mother's gone. But I'm also glad because it was when she passed, like she had lung, brain, and a bone cancer. I mean, it was bad.
yeah.
So it was like we were glad because she was in so much pain, and so that. But at the same time, it's like I always feel so strange because my mother was such a large source of my trauma. Her being gone is a bit of relief in my life. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, and this is a confession. And as I'm saying, I'm like, why am I saying this? Because this is so
No,
awful.
it
It
is
and it isn't though. It isn't. It isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I miss my mother, and I don't want my mom to be gone, and of course not. And I'm sorry for the loss of my dad's life and
Yeah.
my siblings' lives. But there is like just coming from like a therapy, the just knowing that it's over, and we ended on such a good note.
Yeah.
That it's like it's really been.
Healing.
It's been healing because it really is, because then it's like we left on such a good note, and I don't have to worry anymore. And there's that whole thing of like I don't have to worry about like the angst of like the relationship with me and my mother is gone now. Do you know? And now it's gone, and it just feels there's a freedom now in
Yeah.
it. Do you
That's
know where
really
it's not
beautiful.
like.
I imagine she feels that way too because
I was just gonna say, and like
Yeah.
I bet any money that my mother is kind of going. I'm so glad I left on a good note
Yeah.
with Deborah, and now we're done. Do you know what I mean?
she's the one that
it
called
was-
and said that, and
Yeah.
I think
She wanted it too. She wanted
Yeah.
it too. She really wanted. She knew that we had a rift. She knew that it was hard, and so. And I think there is that sort of like, and and I do, and I often feel, in the confession of it is like I feel guilty often because my twin sister, they still. My siblings still talk about, I miss mom so much, and like my brain always goes, oh yeah, yeah, and like because, but it's like. it's different for me. It's just it's different for me,
yeah.
and that's something that I always feel. It's nice to say it out loud because I always feel a little guilty. I feel, yes, miss my mother, but like I didn't realize how much my siblings, like my twin sister, like still cries over it. And I think, now like 4 years gone, I'm kind of like, oh, okay. And it makes me feel like a bad person. But then at the same time, I know in my heart that, we were good and, we really got to say goodbye to each other. And that now it's like there is sort of I don't know, like I feel like a lot of changes have happened and like more progress in my personal emotional life
like you
have
became
happened in the
more
last 4 years.
It sounds like you became present in not saying like that your siblings necessarily aren't, but there is a sense of like when you're still needing the parental love from your mom as an adult, it's very hard to truly feel that independence as an adult, which sometimes we're forced to do too early, right? Like when you feel like you're the odd one out, you are forced to like find your new family early, and that can be traumatizing because you feel shunned. But then in a way that sets you up, like I think a lot of comedians have that in that, when you realize you're all alone on stage and you're the only person who can get yourself back up, you start to feel invincible. And then you can deal with people in your life like your, parents or anybody that maybe you didn't have the perfect relationship in a way that is more objective. Like you're not needing them to. We all still want the validation a bit, but
yes, of course you do.
Need
Everyone
it
does.
To be okay.
But there is like I kind of hope for my sister that it dissipates soon. Do you know what I mean? Like I really do. It's kind of like I hope that missing of mom goes away soon because we all miss. Like it's like 2.5 years after mom passed away, the movie The Farewell, with Aquafina came out. And then, have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then it was a beautiful movie. And at the end of that movie, I stood outside the theater with my friend Zach Noe Towers and cried like a child. And and still moments like that still happen where it's like something will trigger me and then you cry and I go, oh, I'm crying because of I'm crying because of my mother. But it's not. And I hope that for my sister. And I hope it for my sisters that they are able to kind of go and say, okay, because and especially because they had such good relationships, and there is a bit of independence now that it's like I kind of hope for that for you.
I think that they'll find it, and I think the hardest part is you having been the caretaker for so long. I think you have to like it is a weird thing where you have to realize like you have to let go even when they're falling because they almost expect someone to catch them. It's like you hope they don't fall, but like the only way for them to learn is to fall.
But you're gonna have to. Yeah, you're gonna have to.
If you think about you fell, and not literally, but like I'm like talking about myself, but I'm like I fell and I was okay. So why do I get so scared when I think about my sister on her own falling? Because I don't want her to go through that. But then at the same time, it's how I got out. It
is kind of the only way to do it too. It's like I mean, again, if we bring back to stand up, it's like you can't teach someone how to be a stand up. Like when someone says to me, "What do you do to become a stand up?" I'm like, the only thing you can do is get on stage. The only thing you can do to get on stage. You can watch as much as you want. You can take a class. You can do whatever you want. You have to get on stage. You've got to be on the stage by yourself bombing. I was
like coaching not through stand-up, but it was mostly, I did this like kind of silly bit to coach New Year's resolutions last year, but one of my clients was, wanted to do stand-up, was new, and one of the assignments I gave him was like, you have to bomb 5 times this month. And because I was like, it's a win-win because we always think avoid bombing, or especially when we're starting out early on, you want to like be better than you are. And it's like, you will be probably, but if you think my goal is to bomb and then you don't bomb, like that's a win. And then you got to do it again. Like it means.
And then when you bomb and you live, you're fine. Everybody, you go through it and you get over it, and then you have fun doing comedy again. That's just.
Then you're not scared.
That's what
it's
happens.
That feeling like if you told me an athlete went through their entire career and never lost, I'd be like, oh, I would be scared of that person, not because of that they're good, but because either they've got some crazy like cheat power, or that they're so wound up. Like imagine
that's something.
Fear.
Oh my God. They're gonna blow up. Oh my God,
yeah. They need to lose now and then know what it feels like and then be like, I won 100 times and lost once, so now I can go back to winning. Like, but if you're like,
absolutely.
I can't do it, I can't lose.
And because it's paralysis, and it's paralysis. Interesting that we say that too, because it's like I do feel like in this sort of thing that it's like at some point you have to stand on your own 2 feet and go and say, okay, I mean, my God, it's like we're not young, and I still hope that for her. I still do.
Yeah.
And so, do I feel guilty that I can say that there is relief in the fact that the sort of the troublesome, fighting, angsty relationship between my mother is really solidly done now? Yeah, I feel guilty, but at the same time, it's like I know how it ended, and I know how I feel, and
You know your truth.
but
I don't
yeah,
think
I
you
do
need
know
to
my
feel
truth.
guilty.
I do know my truth,
Yeah.
but I can't pretend that I'm not, like, there isn't a part of me
Yeah.
that kind of goes, whew, that's
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's okay. I think the truth is we all want to say and do the quote unquote right thing according to, like, movie magic, but like it's true. Like, you didn't, like, okay, the logical thing whenever I go like, am I the crazy one? I go, well, if I'm the crazy one being like guilty, that would mean that I as a child decided to ignore all the good upbringing and wonderful resources just so that I could get to this point later
Yeah,
and
no.
later. It's like, of course not. Of course, as a
Absolutely
child,
not.
you were
Yeah.
willing to accept love and ready. And so, like,
No.
everything brought you here because not like it's all one person's fault, but because you were trying to keep yourself safe, which
That's
means
it.
that
Stand to survive.
there's
That's
no
all we
reason
do.
to feel guilty because you kept yourself safe and you got here.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, I think it speaks volumes that when your mom reached out and said, "Do you want to stop hating each other?" Like, it's not just that she was like, "Do you want to stop hating me?" Like,
Yeah.
it implies that she understands.
She understood.
what
That's
she
exactly
has
it. Oh my
done.
God.
Yeah, what she's done and it matters, and she cares, and it's too much to say, but yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, but like.
Oh my
it
God, I
really
didn't even,
means-
like, that's
yeah.
you're the first person that's ever said that. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
And that's the hard
Yeah,
part
that's
because you want
true.
to be
I
seen.
didn't
You want to
even
be
realize
seen,
that.
but people can't always. It's a lot. I mean, maybe she wasn't in the place to be able to just
Yeah.
say like, "I've done this," but
Yeah.
she can see that you're successful and a person and.
But you're right though, because it wasn't her just saying stop hating me. It was like hating each other. She knew that she had a partner
And had
oh my
a
God,
reason.
Teresa.
Aw.
But
Well,
it's
she
true
knew
though.
you were
That's like
justified. She knew
Yeah.
that she was not holding it against you of how you
No,
felt about it.
yes, and that was the
Yeah.
thing too. And like again, it's like I'm so grateful because I was also, and I'm so glad that I was able to say yes instead of be like no, because I could have,
Yeah.
and then who knows what would have happened from then. So I'm
Aw,
super
I'm
grateful.
so-
Yeah, this is great. This has been fun. I really enjoyed this.
I love it. Well, maybe ending on a positive note. If you want to share, like, in the last year you guys got to talk to each other, was there anything
Yeah.
surprising you guys talked about that you were like a story she shared that you were like,
Oh.
oh my God, I
that's
didn't
cute.
see her this way.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
kind of stuff. Well, you know what it was. This is nice to end it on a nice note. Again, I think we look at our parents like parents. They're not people. And my mom and dad. My God, they were together for 52 years, right?
Wow.
And so and the relationship had been whatever. It's like 52 years is a long time to be together, and so they went through rough stuff and so on. But then to really see how much my mother and father loved each other is like I mean that's the stuff that still makes me want to cry, because I remember my mom telling me, and this is like when she's so sick and she's bald and she's so sick, and her saying to me that she said like she loved my dad more than she ever had. That she's like, I love him more now than she said than our entire relationship. And she's like, not even just love him. She's like, I'm in love with him. And this is like my 77-year-old mother. They've been together for 52 years. And it's just like hearing that from my mom was so beautiful. And then her telling me, earlier, their wedding anniversary. So it was like they were married in April and then mom died in January. So it was like their wedding anniversary. She said to my dad, she said, Joe, which was your favorite year of our marriage? And he said, this one. This one, Sue. You know what I mean? It was just like, and hearing my mom talk about it, it's just like, I should never that, because my parents were never like that. They were never demonstrative. They never did anything. So just hearing about like, my mom was still a woman and still in love with her husband, and I never knew that. I never knew anything. Like, you just your parents. But it was just so lovely to hear that, like, in the last really hard year of their life, my mother and father were really happy together, and that my mother she never loved him more than she did then. And it was just like, yeah, I needed to hear it. I also needed to hear that, so that was yeah, it's lovely.
I love that, and it totally tracks as a way to like wrap up with you and your mom, because it doesn't matter all this stuff behind it because it's the present that matters.
Absolutely.
And how you
exactly.
feel now and
Absolutely.
how you ended.
Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow doesn't exist. It's only today.
Oh, Deborah, I'm so happy you shared this.
Me too. I'm so
I love crying too, and I do have to apologize for making you cry, but I
love it.
I feel catharsis.
Yes,
and
it is.
I think the listeners will too. I think this is a great place to end. I feel like we ended on a positive note. Can you tell us where we can find you and follow your comedy?
Yes.
And, obviously.
I'm Instagram Debra DG, like we said before, so it's DEBRADG, and that's where I post everything. But I taped a short special on Epix last year for Unprotected Sets, and it's one of those ones. It's one of those networks that you can buy for a week. Like, try a free trial for a week. So check it out because I really like the set. So you can check that out on Unprotected Sets on Epix.
And you've got late night sets on YouTube. Oh, I think they're still out there. So look up Debra.
They're out there.
So much comedy out there. So funny. One of my favorite comedians. And you can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod and follow me at Teresa Lee Bot on Twitter and on Instagram. I changed my handle. It's Teresa Lee Bot on Instagram and Larissa T on Twitter. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.